Hi, Sarah.
Hey, I just made you a co-host. Hey, David.
Good evening. How are you?
Doing fine. How
I was
are
tempted. I was tempted to zoom in from outdoors, but it's so nice outside. But it may be dark by the time the meeting's over.
Yeah, it probably will be.
But it still is getting lighter later. That's the nice thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's nice and light for quite some time.
Till the end of June, it just keeps getting lighter and later. So.
Yep.
Nice haircut, David.
Well, thank you. It was official. I go close to someone at work, and of course they've been closed.
Yep.
So then I had to make an appointment, and I got backed up 2 weeks out, and I was kind of hesitant to get rid of my high school haircut, but it was. He's like, "Wow."
Yeah.
You know, it needed to go.
Yep.
Needed to go.
Well, you look very professional.
Someone at work took a before I was leaving, because it was like a 10:30 thing, so I left for an hour, and someone said, "Wait, let me take a before," and then they took. So I'll share it. It's pretty funny to see the before and after, but.
One of my brothers did that same thing, and he said he's got a little daughter who's like 2, and he said that she just, when he walked back in, she just looked at him and like didn't know what to do.
Well, it's kind of neat. We took a photo. Ryan's hair is in longer mode, and so we did this side by side thing for me versus Ryan too. And there's a picture of my mom from years ago too, when she was sitting in an Adirondack chair. She always had short hair, but my hair was almost as long as my mother's.
Oh, that's funny.
And I look a lot like my mother in the photo. It's good. We're moving on. We can get our haircuts and everything's. We're gonna get it back to normal.
I sure do hope so. Megan, Lisa isn't going to be here tonight, and since Sarah's not here, can you and I work together to do minutes?
Yes. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Me too. I almost forgot. It was on my mind all afternoon. Oh, actually, Sarah's here.
Can you hear my children arguing in the background?
I can hear little voices.
It's that time.
Yeah.
Time of day. Are we just waiting on Bill?
Yeah, he's having a little bit of connectivity issues. He just texted me.
Okay.
Oh, here he is.
Speak of the devil.
Sorry. Finishing my dinner. Kind of a crazy day.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Start up here. All right.
I'm on. I made it, Sarah.
Good, thanks, Bill. I saw. Glad you're here.
Okay.
Sarah Fox.
Yeah.
Lisa's not going to be here tonight, so you'll have to take minutes.
Okay, can you record it and then make
Yep.
sure you get me the recording?
It's definitely recording. Yep.
All right, because I think that will be the easiest way for me to take care of it.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks. Is there any way you can give me the capability to record?
No, it's not allowing me to. Are you on a Chromebook?
I am.
That's why.
Okay, that's good to know that that's a limitation of it.
Yep.
I didn't know that. All right, if you just send it to me tonight, I'll try to work on it. Oh, like you can get it done as soon as possible.
Yep, definitely. It has to kind of like put itself into my computer afterwards. So depending
Okay.
on what time it finishes doing that, I'll send it off either tonight or tomorrow morning first thing.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Should we get started? I don't see anybody else in the waiting room.
Yeah, sure. We've had a little lull. We can get started. So I will call to order at 7:04. So tonight's meeting only has a couple of things on the agenda. It's a follow-up to the conversation that the budget subcommittee had last Friday. And so we needed to just make a couple of decisions as a full committee so that the budget subcommittee has a good idea of how to handle their next meeting come this Friday. So I'm not sure, Bill or Megan or Sarah, who wants to speak about that meeting? And the first item on our list is the FY21 capital outlay or capital request.
I will, because I'm on facilities too, unless Bill wants to take it.
No, that's fine. I think that might be better for you and Megan to at least give the general, because I got shut out of that last few minutes of the meeting where there was some suggestions on how to move forward.
Okay, so I don't know if anybody needs an update on how we came to the items that are on the list, or is everybody clear on that? Should we do a quick
No, I'm good. I think, you know.
overview? Maybe the
Yeah.
public as well.
I think that
Okay.
might be helpful.
Okay. So
Excuse me, Sarah, I do have, I can show a screenshot of the final priority list that the super.
That would
That
be
would be really
wonderful.
great. All right, I made you,
I'll do that while you talk.
yes, I
Okay.
made you a co-host, so you should be able to do that, Bill.
So the facilities committee, which is comprised of Michelle, Todd, myself, Jen, and we were joined by Jeff St. George, who you guys heard from the other day or other night, who does facilities management and various aspects of that professionally. And John Moretti was part of it at one point. So what we did is we did a walkthrough of every building. And when we did each walkthrough, the principal of each building would join us and kind of give us a breakdown of what goes on in their building. And then from that, we developed a large list. We made our priorities and kind of went from there. So for us as a committee, the biggest thing we were concerned about is the capital facilities needs assessment, because we think that that's the best way. We keep hearing from the town that we don't maintain our buildings, and to a certain, and they're correct. And I don't think it's any fault of our own, other than we just haven't been able to at this point, budget-wise, to maintain them to the level that we would all hope to. We do maintenance. So we want this to kind of, what that study will do will give us a very clear, comprehensive assessment of every building, all the systems, the lifespan, when we should be looking at prioritizing, updating various systems and things like that. And I think that information will be very helpful in determining a facilities plan moving forward, as well as if we need to come up with information for future capital ask, future override information, we'll have really concrete data points. So that was one item. Then safety was a big concern. Coffin, the front doors don't close on their own. You have to really work at it to get it, and they don't always latch. Very often, I've just walked literally right into the building if I'm picking up one of my kids early. So it's a huge issue. And then Dan Bauer at the high school was very concerned about the setup that we currently have with how visitors enter the building at the high school. He referenced how many other high schools are doing it now. And I guess Swampscott is using a system that he thinks will work very well for Marblehead High School and increase safety there. So of course we want safety to be a priority for our students. So we went with his suggestion on that. The middle school floor, you know, you see here sand repaint and refinish both gym floor. I can't remember if that covered both gym floors or both or just the one. So I'll have to defer to Jen or Bill if they remember that. And then the library carpet. The issue with the library carpet is it's buckled in areas and dipping and sagging in others. There's also some outlets that come up through the floor right now where the electrical is involved with the carpet area. And then Glover School interior painting, it's taken a beating because of budget things. When we built the school, they weren't as resilient, some of the surfaces, as I think what we're speccing in the new school. So they've just taken a beating. The school is looking very rough, and we want to keep our investment in that new property and keep it up to date. So that's kind of the breakdown of where we are. So at our last meeting, we talked about with FinCom what we want to do with that, with the capital ask, as well as this additional surplus that we found. And I had put forth the idea, what if we take the capital, this is only one option. What if we reduce our capital ask or take it away to save the town some outlay for this fiscal year, and instead purchased or enter into contracts to fix this thing with some of our surplus before July 1. Therefore, saving the town money and also getting us what we need. So that was one option. There are other options of what to do. I think Jason, at last I understood it, had prioritized that he couldn't meet all these needs as had been previously thought because of the financial situation we're in right now. And he thought at best we were looking at around 80,000. But then there was the talk of, do we take it offline altogether and use some of our surplus? So there's a lot to talk about here, but that's kind of where we've come out. And if there's anything else to add, Megan.
No, I think that, really was the crux of this piece of the conversation on Friday is, take that off the town's list of financial responsibilities for next year. We do have the surplus. It makes financial sense to use a one-time surplus for a one-time expense like these capital outlays.
I will say my only concern was covering all 177.75 of it from the surplus is Michelle has cautioned us repeatedly that we can't assume that no extra bills will come in, that some bills, because of the way we account for purchase orders in this fiscal year, they're changing it for next year. We have to be prepared for that. So I want to defer to Michelle on what she thinks we need to safely leave ourselves for wiggle room so that we don't get into a situation. But if she feels safe with this number, then I would defer to her.
Sarah, my perception from that conversation on Friday was that the town wasn't expecting us to utilize the full 200 or whatever it is surplus for these capital outlays. They were expecting us to use a portion of it. Did you take that same?
What I understood is we were going to talk about it as a committee and then come back with what our committee had agreed upon and run it by them first and get some of their feedback. But that they wanted us as a committee first to come up with what we thought was best and then just circle back.
Yeah, I agree with that piece, but I guess I left there feeling like they weren't expecting us to spend it all.
I did not get that impression. Maybe Bill or Michelle can speak to that, but that was not my impression. Bill or Michelle?
Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Like I said, I missed the end of the conversation, but what my understanding is that the number was $81,000 that Jason had penciled in as a reduced number for the schools, and that included not just these items on this list, but the two vehicles that we had requested, which are on a separate list. And that was the first of a 3-year school bus lease for a new yellow bus, and then a pickup truck. So those items are up for discussion as well. And then in addition to that, I kind of had the same impression that Megan did, that they'd like to see what the committee would like to do with the capital. But I did get a sense that they were looking to see some of that $225,000 that was identified as an approximation additional come back to the town. The one thing that I would say just at this point, and I would ask Michelle to weigh in, is, I'm thinking that just as a safety valve at 225, I'd like to see a safety valve of $35,000 to $50,000, just in case there are unknowns for this year that we weren't aware of. Invoices out there that for things that were either received or ordered without going through the purchase order process.
Bill, my understanding is also that if we decide to go forth with the buses and the trucks, because those are leases, they have to go through town meeting under that warrant article, because those leases need to be approved by town meeting.
Town meeting would approve the lease. The funding source can be identified. So it could be, the funding source could be, current year funds, or from the FY21 budget, which we'd probably do. We'd probably have to purchase some supplies equal to that first year lease, and then just pay the first year lease from FY21. But as long as it's done prior to June 30th, as I understand it, as Michelle and I talked about that today, that process is not an issue.
Okay. And then
Which
was it that the town was asking us, was going to give us 81 or roughly, and then we could do a portion of the remaining out of our 225 surplus, or was it that they wanted the 81 that they were going to give us to go away completely, and they wanted us to only use a portion of the 225?
The latter was my understanding, Sarah.
Yeah. And the 81, by the way, is the total.
Yeah.
Combination of this list plus the 2 vehicle list.
David, you've got your hand up?
Right, so historically, on the town meeting warrant, there are 2 articles. One's for equipment and one's for buildings. And now I'm hearing that it's a total for the buildings and the vehicles. And that adds a different twist into this. But given that we are looking at pursuing a lease, a capital equipment lease rather than the purchase, that will bring the cost down significantly versus how we've done it previously. So I think we might be able to make things work there because, as you said, Bill, we just need to make sure we're paying for the first year of the lease, and then we have a commitment, of course, to pay that in future years, but we don't need the full capital cost to purchase the vehicle up front.
Right. And that's how
Even,
the article warrant was going to be written for many of the vehicles on that list.
Okay.
Sarah, you were going to say something?
David, I know this is what you do for your day job. Do you often recommend that it's better to do the lease or to do the full buyout?
Well, I mean, essentially, as we all make those decisions, it's the cost of money. I mean, if you can, at the time of acquisition, just buy the vehicle, it's certainly more cost effective up front. But the thing, at least in my day job, is by doing a lease, it gives you a predictable expense over a period of time instead of, in this example, where you would ask for, let's say the pickup truck is $45,000, you'd ask for $45,000 in 1 year, and then 5 years later you ask for another $45,000. It helps in stabilizing your rates, or in this case, stabilizing your budget, where you have a fixed amount that might be, $7,000 a year for 5 years, as opposed to this, can I get the money to buy the vehicle this year? Then for 5 years, you don't have any expenses. And then you have to ask for or request funding when that vehicle needs to be replaced. And as we all know, the cost of money right now is very low historically. And it does add money to the acquisition, but it just helps stabilize rates. And in this case, it would help stabilize our budget if you just had, I think, it's a good question, Sarah, a fixed amount over the term of the lease. And then it helps you also decide when you go to replace that vehicle, is the vehicle suitable to keep it in your fleet and keep using it as a bus, or should we replace it? And then at least you still have that money in your budget. And let's say 5 years from now, the new bus is now $8,000 a month instead of $7,000. You just don't incur those big swings in expenses. So it's definitely a good opportunity. And a lot of municipalities do it if you can't spend the capital right up front. Yeah.
Just a couple more benefits, Dave, in the public sector with the public schools. These leases are always lease to own. And right now, interest rates are
Good
very,
point.
very low. So the cost of money becomes much less of an issue. And so after 3 years, for example, we'll own that yellow bus. And the other benefit to that is typically our public school vehicles, even the big yellow buses, the life expectancy that we have for those vehicles go well beyond the length of the lease terms. So
Yeah.
in 3 years, we'll own that bus. And, you know, based on our current comparatives, you know, we'll be able to operate that bus for the next 6 to 7 years
Right.
once it's owned. So,
Good point. Instead of doing the typical 3-year, 36,000 miles, which is a net lease, as opposed to the equity lease where you own the vehicle at the end of the term. So, yeah, good point, Bill. Yep.
So Bill, do you know how much that cost was within that capital outlay and
I believe it was $40,000. Michelle, do you know?
Yeah, it was just right about 40,000. One was, I believe, 16, 17 for the pickup, and the bus was 22, 23,000.
Yeah.
thanks, Michelle.
So that leaves us 40,000 left, which concerns me because right now I would say from a facility standpoint, the safety items are a must, and the capital needs assessment for me is a must, because how do we build any data that we need for next year moving forward without that? And that's, you know, 92.75, and what we have to play with is 40.
We talked to Todd. I talked to Todd about the 2 vehicles, and his priority would be the bus, because the bus, we can also use that additional bus. What we would be able to do with the new yellow bus is we'll be able to keep the 3 buses we currently have, even though 2 of them have 100,000 miles. We will be able to keep those in service, and we'll be able to use them. We'll be able to use at least one of them, which we use now for extracurricular activities, field trips, but mostly athletic trips after school hours. So we'll have an additional yellow bus we can use for those trips, which we will see a savings from certainly from our athletic transportation line by doing that. We haven't calculated, you know, how many trips that might be and what a savings might be, but that definitely will be an added benefit to having the additional bus. Todd said that would be his preference over the pickup truck, and if we had to wait on the pickup truck, I know you've heard this before, but he said we could go 1 more year without the pickup truck. Just keep that in mind. So that would give you another $17,000 to put back to the building-based list. And then I just wanted you to note that after March 25th, Todd had received a much more clear estimate on the library carpet. Well, we won't get down to that point anyway. But one other point I wanted to make is with our custodians having been back in school full time for the last 2.5 weeks, there is a lot of interior painting going on in all of our buildings. But again, that's at the bottom of the list. So I'm not sure that's going to have an impact now that I really think that through.
So Bill, you sent us something about those coffin doors.
Yes.
I just wasn't clear from that, because can you just explain that a little bit?
Michelle can probably explain it better than me. I had a conversation with Todd about 2.5 hours ago on my way home, and he, so those doors to replace would have to be custom doors. No, they're not a standard school size entry doors because of the architectural design of that front entryway. And what he's hearing from some vendors who have been willing to come out and take a look is that they would take on the job, but because of the way that they have to customize the doors to fit in that frame, they would not guarantee parts of the assembly like hinges. I don't quite fully understand that. Michelle, maybe you understand that better. But he did, earlier this afternoon, after you sent that email, he did get a response from a company that said they'd be willing to do the work as was described in Todd's message to them. They have been out to look at it, and Todd, they said they would forward an estimate to him. Todd was hoping that he would have gotten it by, by the end of the day, but he said he'd send it to me, but I haven't seen it.
Did they give him any kind of a ballpark?
He did not tell me that.
I mean, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, is that $20,000 still a valid estimate?
So can I?
Do
I
you have
my
any
hand up,
information,
Sarah.
Oh,
Michelle?
I'm sorry, Jen. It didn't
Yeah.
show up on, go ahead.
So just a couple things I wanted to mention. Sarah Fox, you can jump in here if you agree or don't agree. I think, first of all, I thought the Glover School interior painting line item bill was really not just Glover. I thought it included some other painting. Maybe I was incorrect in that, but I thought there were some other areas that would cover.
No, that was just I earmarked for Glover.
Okay.
I recall.
I think the other question that I had that wasn't clear to me is the description of what Dan Bauer was looking for the high school replace front entry doors was actually a bigger scope than just the front entry doors, was my understanding, that this was a security issue and that it was going to also be so that the front entrance would be the main entrance for all people coming in the building, students and guests, and so it would no longer be over to the side because they have a site issue there, and so it would also include like a security desk and a security project, if you will, for the atrium. So I just wasn't sure if that 30,000 was enough based on what he described, because somebody is going to have to be sitting there. That's the whole point, to let people in the people in the front door versus the side door. So that was just an observation that I had that I don't know how accurate that number is.
So I would agree that it wasn't a replacement per se of the front entry doors, but Dan was asking us to provide kind of a build out with some type of check-in desk where you would check in and have your ID scanned, and it was more to facilitate almost like not a kiosk, but kind of like schools now are built with man traps, that type of thing.
But it was also the doors, because the doors are 20 years old as well. So I'm going to just make a comment that, and if this is not the appropriate time, we can talk about it, but we're talking about the capital outlay, but we're also talking about the use of the surplus, right? So it's sort of two kind of things in there, if I'm not mistaken. So one thing I just wanted to throw out to you, Bill, and to the committee is, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, that we had sent out a district-wide messenger, I think this week, regarding school lunches, that the lunch program will be ending on June 18th.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I just wonder whether, when I saw that, is that something that we want to consider running through June or through the summer? If we have families in need, is that something that I think we should maybe consider extending that program.
And using the surplus towards that?
Well, yes, I guess. I don't know where else it would come. I think that we could ask Michelle about that, but we're running a deficit, I think, actually in the revolving fund. And I'm just throwing it out there. It just, I saw that, and I saw that we were referring parents and families to food pantries on the North Shore. And so I just wonder if it's something that this committee would want to consider.
Yeah, the only information I have, Jen, relative to that is, my understanding is that there's a resource list that was sent out,
Yeah.
and it was more than just food pantries. There were other opportunities for assistance, and what they all are, I'm not sure.
Okay, I just thought it was, I know it ended on the last day of school, but even if we wanted to extend it through the fiscal year to June 30th, I don't know. I just thought it would be something folks might want to consider.
So,
Michelle, would you have a ballpark around if we did it through the end of June? Because that seems like, I mean, obviously we can have the larger budget conversation, but it seems like it would have to, for tonight's purposes, be for FY20.
Well, that is FY20, right? So that's what I need to extend it until
Right.
the last day of school, but the last day of the fiscal year.
Yeah,
Right.
through the end of the year would only be probably a few $1,000s more, because we would not have full staff. So it's not every single cafeteria staff that is running that program. It's I believe it's about 8 of them altogether. And that would probably be reduced even more. So it'd be a few thousand to extend it through the end of June. But then it does become a staffing issue through the whole summer. We are actually having difficulty getting all of our staff into the kitchens this week and next week to clean. The availability is just not there, or the willingness. So I don't know the willingness of the staff to continue through the end of June or through the end of the summer. But I think the willingness through the end of the month would be more so positive than the full summer.
Michelle, a few thousand per week or a few thousand total?
In total, because they're working through June 18th anyways.
Okay.
So.
David, you had your hand up?
I asked a quick question of Michelle.
Oh yeah, hold on, David. Bill's going to say something.
Michelle, I think I remember that you had the estimate or the approximation of the cost of running food service was $8,000 a month for paying all of our employees.
Yes. For the payroll piece, yes.
For the payroll piece. So if we did extend it till June 30th, that's 8 additional days. And if you divide the 8,000 cost by 20 days in a month, approximately, that comes out to $400 a day. So, if the full staff was on, we were paying all salaries, it would be $3,200. It's probably, it's less than that. I thought Richard had said that all in that program, just to run that was about $300 a day, but I'm not sure. It might even be less.
Yeah, no, most likely that's the ballpark.
To me, that's a number that if the committee, was inclined to do that, providing Richard could get, the staff he would need, I'd be happy to talk to him about that and get that word out. I think that's a cost that we could absorb, frankly.
I think that's a great idea. Anything that we can do to help help families for as long as we can, I would fully support. Thanks for putting that idea forward.
Yeah, I agree that that's an excellent idea, Jen.
Sarah, the other thing I meant to ask, are we doing public comment tonight or no? I just wasn't sure.
It was not on the agenda.
Okay.
We have those 2 items, and then the possibility of if we decide we need to go into executive session at the end.
Okay.
Can I just ask one more question about the?
Yeah, and David, I know you've got a question too.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, David.
no, if we want to close out, I agree with Jen, and I think it's been great that everything we've been doing in the food services but just getting back to the agenda item on capital equipment and vehicles. My thought was, seems like we need the school bus. We've identified what that cost is, and that we need to work on replacing the front entry doors. To Jen's comment, need to work through what the design and cost will be, and we're waiting for estimates to come in on Coffin. So the bus and the doors might be a little bit over. Maybe we can go back to the town, we can get that to work. But I also agree that we need to do the capital facilities needs assessment. But if we leave that out of the equation right now, and we see where we go with COVID-19, and if things continue to get positive and we move back to a sense of normalcy, that we may, with a $41 million budget, we may have the flexibility in the fall to do a capital needs assessment. So I'm just going to come out right now and say I agree that safety and security should be first and foremost. And I'd like to see us address the doors, the high school and Coffin School. And I think we need to have a school bus. And as Bill said, it will help reduce costs potentially for transportation for extracurricular activities. And I think the committee should move forward with a recommendation and work to get an agreement with the town on a number that will support replacing the doors and getting us the new school bus. That's my recommendation at this point.
Megan?
Yeah, well, my question, so I had a question still about the lunch piece. Can I just,
Yeah.
or do you want to focus on what David said? Because I can always circle back to that.
I think, you know, it's
I think
probably out there.
We can come back to the lunch piece. I think discuss David's suggestion and then we'll can always circle back.
Okay.
So just so I know, what, David, did we leave out? I was trying to take notes on this. What did you not want to put in there? Or was there everything on there?
Well, it's not what I don't want to. It's based on what we're hearing, based on the fiscal situation that the district is in.
All
So,
right, so
we all recognize it would be nice to do the carpet for $9,900, paint,
Okay.
glover. I totally agree. And pre-COVID, we were rolling right along to get these things done. So my recommendation was the doors at Coffin, the doors at the high school, and the bus. And then as a committee, we would need to work with Michelle and the new superintendent to see how the budget goes once we're into FY21, and if there's any forecast of the opportunity to do the needs assessment, which I think is critical as well. It's a tough one, but safety and security needs to trump that, I think, based on what you and Sarah have told me about and told the committee about those entryways. I just think that should be the priority. So the two doors and the bus would be,
okay.
if that's
I guess I'm
where
just
we're at.
confused on, maybe I need some help here. Are we looking at a number and then backing in these items? Or are we looking at items and saying that's what we think we need? I guess
I'm looking at $20,000 for Coffin estimated,
Okay.
$30,000 for high school estimated, and I can't. The capital lease on the bus was, again, Bill or Michelle. What was that number?
$40,000 approximately.
40. So we'd be at 90,000. We'd be about $10,000 over the ask of what the town is looking for us to come to, but
Okay.
maybe we can make that work.
And then not use any of our surplus.
Well, so the surplus, I agree if there's an opportunity, but looking at the calendar, what I'm concerned about is, like, I know from what I understand, Michelle, you can correct me, from when Ken did these, is it if it's over $20,000, we need to post it in the paper and take the lowest bid, and if it's under $20,000, we can award it? Is $20,000 the threshold?
25,000.
25. Okay, so it's hard, Jen, I think, to, with 3 weeks to go, could we get it out to the street and have a vendor respond? And I don't know with the mechanisms in order to be able to use monies from FY20 and how the Massachusetts general laws are related to that. But, you know, if we could sneak it in 3 weeks and post, you know, the bid in the paper in 2 weeks, and we could get bids back to, yeah, maybe we could use some of the surplus as well. But I just don't know with the calendar if we have enough time to get that done.
So can I ask, Michelle, can I ask what will sound like a maybe redundant question, but is a capital needs assessment a capital outlay?
Yes and no, but because of the dollar figure, it definitely would have to go out to bid.
Well, the reason I ask that is because, so I'm just trying to understand kind of the accounting on this, right? So we are able to use surplus dollars for very limited things from one fiscal year to another, one of which is the prepayment of tuition for out-of-district placement, which I think we've talked about already doing that.
Yes.
Right.
So if we were to use additional dollars, surplus dollars to pay additional prepaid tuition, does that, like, do these items that are on our capital outlay request, I know it's a separate warrant ask, but is that not allowable to come out of an operating budget?
It certainly could. I don't know if there's any bylaw for the town that would preclude them from coming out of the operating budget. But
In other
by
words, what I'm saying is we use
yeah,
additional surplus dollars for additional out-of-district placements, and we move the out-of-district placement cost for our line item in our FY21 budget over to these hard costs, or some of these hard costs.
to free up some of the costs for this. You could absolutely do that. There's nothing in Mass General Law that would prevent that from occurring.
So we wouldn't have that sort of time crunch trying to get contracts done that it would really be an FY21, but we could start the process after July 1st and go that way.
Correct.
And Michelle, I mean, I'm in agreement with the thought process here that we would just have to put an asterisk that this is a one-time ask, so that next year that money wouldn't carry forward in the budget.
Correct, but we also will, as we had the discussion on Friday with the subcommittee or with the town, a lot of these costs that we're prepaying may be recurring and showing up in the FY22 budget. And so the FY22 budget is going to really need to stand alone and not necessarily be a rollover of FY21 because of the unique situation that we're in where we're
But I also think we were talking about that anyway. Whether,
Yes.
you know, whether we talk about, if we want to get into semantics of a zero-based, a needs-based, a value-based, whatever it is, that we were going to hopefully begin that exercise at the start of the new fiscal year.
Correct. Yes.
So how about we approach the committee with the articles that are going to be on the town warrant for our capital equipment, and then we have identified, it seems like what you're saying, Jen, is next in line below, and the rest of the committees can chime in here. Then the fourth item would be the needs assessment. And is there a way we can use the surplus in our budget to help pay for the capital needs assessment? I think
Yes.
that's what you're saying.
Which is a one-time cost, and it would be
A one-time cost.
somehow-
Out of that 225, Bill said reserve 50 out of it, so we're down to 175. Use 50 of it for a capital assessment. Depending on how much we end up using or don't use, still turn 100, 130 back to the town, somewhere in that range. I think that's that's the order of priority, it seems like, is get the doors done by what we can do. And is there a way we can use the surplus to help fund the capital needs assessment?
And that assumes we have the 80,000 or whatever.
Right, so at that point, would we be better off going back to the town this Friday and saying, we would like to put another $100,000 or X amount of money to prepay tuition, freeing up X amount of money in FY21 to address our capital and fleet piece. And then that way, we aren't necessarily, since we don't have hard costs, we just have these estimates, it sort of takes the what everything is earmarked for out of the equation right now. Am I making sense?
Yes, but one concern, and I brought this up several times in the budget meeting on Friday, is as we currently figure out the budget that is agreed upon as a starting point from the town is the current fiscal year's budget plus COLA increases equals what the town offers. So what we're doing is we're taking, right now we know for sure, we're taking 200,000 and prepaying and taking it off our books. And now we're saying maybe another 100,000. So when we do that rollover next year, our base is already 200,000 to 300,000 less than it costs to run our school system.
But that's what Michelle, I think, was saying, is that come FY22 conversations, that, you know, that 200 plus X has to be an additional add immediately. I asked, and Michelle and Bill were on the call as well as Megan. I asked a couple times if that could be guaranteed to come back in, and the town was, Ben spoke on this, and he said, you know, we always want to work together, and the town always wants to help the schools as they can. However, there could be no agreement right now that would happen. They would do the best they could, but there's no agreement. And I have to say, I'm very cautious. I'm just cautious. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, no, I can understand that.
That we're, and I don't think the town would ever say, we have the money and we're not going to give it to you. We just know we're in a really bad financial spot and it's only going to get worse. And I just want to make sure that we're setting the schools up for success next year, that we're not starting in a deficit. So as much as I want to use this money to prepay, I just want it to be clear in the conversation that that money, in my mindset, will have to somehow come back in so that we know we're starting from a point that we can fund our special education costs.
Yep. No, I think that's a valid concern. I think, you know, I wasn't in that conversation. My guess would be that the thinking on the hesitancy of it is that we don't know, like, if the town doesn't have it next year, the town doesn't have it next year. Like, if the situation, generally speaking, is worse than right now, that's where we're at. And that's kind of where we're at anyways then. David, go ahead.
Right. I mean, I've recent stories in the last week, you know, what the legislature is going to do, what the state funding is going to be. I agree with your comment there, Sarah, but given the situation that we're in now, unfortunately, pre-COVID, we might have had a little bit more forward opportunity to look a few years down the road, but COVID's thrown a real curve into things, and whether or not, you know, how it's going to affect the funding from the state and everything else. And I think that's a good point, but we are being very short term here right now, for sure. We're trying to look at our short term needs, and to your point, when we get to the budget cycle in December and we understand where things are, this could result in a shortfall for FY22. I don't disagree with that.
And
and I think, Jen, sorry, and I'll stop. And I think in any opportunity, this has never happened as far as I know, where there's ever been money that's been turned back at the end of the year. And we all know that money goes to free cash, and we all know that Marblehead uses free cash to offset the tax rate. And free cash has continued to be pinched as, you know, budgets increase, and 70 to 80% of our expenses are wages and fringes and healthcare. And we're challenged by the reduction in fringe benefits and all those things. So free cash, whatever we use up, doesn't come back to us in subsequent years. So you're right, it creates a cascade of challenges, and we need to all recognize that. And we're trying to close the gap this year, as we did at our budget hearing, which I think I'm really happy to hear. When you look at the news stories that are out there in Brookline, laying off 75 teachers, Franklin, 103 teachers. It was in the news this morning when I woke up. I mean, 103 teachers at a school like in Franklin, where they just built a new high school 3 years ago. It's devastating. And these are challenging times, and we didn't need to go to that extent. And we're on the fringes now of trying to go forward with what we wanted to do pre-COVID. And I think we're close, and we can still do some things that we want. We've set money aside for COVID expenses that we haven't anticipated, and we need to just be cognizant of the decisions that we make tonight. And I agree with everybody. Next year will be a challenge, depending on what happens with state funding, for sure.
Jen, I think,
So,
hold on, Sarah, I think Jen was trying to say something, and then I know your hand is raised.
Okay, I thought Megan has been cut off a couple of times, though.
Okay.
Well, you can come back to me. Finish this conversation and then come back to me.
So I just want to, sort of make a statement, or sort of state my opinion here. And that is that we were appropriated a sum of money last year at town meeting, $39.6 million. And we have not overspent that. We have underspent that. We were, I don't know how we want to put this. We were the unfortunate recipients, I guess, of a surplus, given, this national global situation that not every part of every municipality did, right? Schools shut down, and it was a unique situation that we shut our buildings down. And we therefore accrued a surplus in a budget to which we were appropriated by town meeting. So I just think it's important that we think about, because we are the school committee, really what is the best use of the funds that we were appropriated for the purposes of our schools. And, that we maximize our opportunity to secure what it is that we believe we need for our students. And I'll leave it at that.
Sarah? Megan, Sarah needs a minute.
So I guess if we're just thinking about how we close off this piece of the agenda, because I just want to be 100% sure that I am, both Sarah and I are clear on what we're deciding here, so that we can carry that forward to our conversation on Friday. And so just humor me. I think what we're hearing is we will spend, of the 200 approximately additional surplus, we will use 20,000 for the Coffin School doors, 30,000 for the high school doors, and 23,000 for the bus.
actually,
We could fund other things too, Megan.
so I was going to talk on,
Figure out today.
yeah, so thank you for giving me that minute. Two of my kids ran in the room, and I wanted to let Matt get them out before I unmuted myself. But so when we walked into the meeting on Friday, my understanding it was based on what had noted that he believes investment in our facilities and capital needs are important, and that's why he was saying he felt they could fund 80 or 81. It was one of those two. And Bill and Michelle announced we had this 225,000, much to everyone's shock. So then the conversation went to, so how could we use this money to possibly pay and take that 81,000 he was offering off the table, or reduce it. So in my mind, you take the 225, the 80, you deduct the 50 that we want to leave ourselves for wiggle room for safety. And then from that, you take off the 20 for Coffin, the 30 for Marblehead High School stores, 23 is it for the bus? And then I was adding in the capital needs assessment because I feel that is, to me, a must. And what you're left with is a delta in the positive variance going back to the town of 157,250. So in my mind, he was offering 80. We threw in another 225. When you work the numbers out, we can get more than 80, but less than 225. You know what I mean? We add in that capital needs assessment, the doors, and the bus, and the town wins and we win. They walk away with a savings of 157,000 plus from what they walked into the meeting from. We're happy. We feel our needs. We feel we're providing what we need for the schools in the time of COVID. We obviously need more than this, but we do have to deal with some facts of our situation. And in my mind, we're still offering the town a surplus. Now, again, and in that number, I estimated 5,000 to carry school lunches through, to be conservative till the end. So that 157 includes 5,000 school lunches.
All right, you
So I
completely lost
think
me.
overall, I would argue that.
I just did the
With
math.
I would second that. I'm completely lost as well.
I'm lost on the math. Because I come up with, you just threw out $447,000 in costs. So I'm just trying to understand.
No, so I took 225 and added the 80 to it, because that's the delta between, they were offering 80, we said we had a surplus of 225, so you add what they were offering our surplus, and that's your starting point.
I guess I don't understand that starting point.
No.
Yeah,
no.
Michelle,
So-
can Michelle just kind of weigh into like if she sort of thinks, because I think that's it's an interesting statement, Sarah.
I think I can summarize it.
Okay.
Yeah, please help, Bill.
No,
Sorry,
Sarah,
Michelle.
Sarah, interrupt me, but I believe what Sarah is saying is that having a bit of a safety net of $50,000. So the 225 becomes 175. The $81,000 that was going to be in the capital, that comes off of capital, so that's $81,000 that the town can decide to do with. So she's adding the 81 to the 175, and that gets you to $256,000. She's then subtracting the $20,000 for the coffin doors, $30,000 for the high school doors, $23,000 for the bus, and $42,000. I rounded it to $42,000 for the assessment. If I'm right, that comes to 115. No, 30,
141.
73. Yeah, 115,000.
You got 141. So can you just, Bill,
That comes to 115. So what Sarah's saying is there's 175. So of that 256, that is funds that theoretically are available now. 115 is spent on those 4 items for the schools. That leaves a balance of $141,000 that then would go back to the town. The difference though, Sarah, and then I'll just add this. The 81,000 of the 141 the town can use right away. they can use for FY21. So the balance of that $60,000 would go back to the general fund to be included in the certified free cash balance available for FY22.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, if we all had money at that table that we were trading back and forth, which obviously we didn't, the town was walking in thinking this party was going to cost them 81,000, and they wind up walking home with, we get what we want, and they walk home with 140 in their pocket. Does that make sense?
Can I just ask a question? If
Mhm.
that's the case, then why are we adding $81,000 to the, I'm
That's,
We
yeah,
don't-
that's the piece I don't
yeah.
get, Jen. I don't
Right.
get
No, so because they were going to spend that money, and now they don't need to. Now they can use that for other things.
No, but back up for a second. Then you're saying we're not getting anything from the town for the capital outlay, and you
Right.
added 81,000 to a $225,000
Because
surplus.
to get the delta, not
No,
that
no, no,
we're
no.
adding it as our money,
That
to
doesn't
get
make
your
any sense, 'cause
delta.
we're not getting that money. So why are you adding it then?
Right.
Another way to look at it is, if we identify right now a conservative $175,000 surplus, what we're really saying is we want to spend from the surplus $115,000. That leaves $60,000 that reverts back to the town, and then the town has the use. Jason can reallocate that 81,000 that's in capital right now for town meeting. He has the ability now to use that to either not spend it or reallocate it to
Okay.
additional FY21 town.
Okay.
We have 177,
Right?
That
we have
makes more sense.
177,000 in our capital outlay, not including the bus. So
Right, so we'd still be, in Sarah's thing, we're not covering everything.
Yeah,
And
we're
the-
definitely not asking for the whole 177.
We
Right,
were
and so-
getting,
why not?
in my suggestion, we were asking for both sets of doors and a facilities assessment, and we were foregoing painting and the vet's floors.
And
But
the
like
bus.
Phil said, we're not really foregoing painting because there's a lot of painting that's going on currently.
How much a Glover I can't speak to, but
Yeah.
bottom line under this plan is that what would be reverting back to the town once the FY20 budget is closed out would be anywhere from conservatively $60,000 to $110,000, because perhaps that 225 estimate holds. There are no surprises.
Mhm.
And so it could be up to that, and who knows? Maybe it's a little more, we just, but, so that's one way to approach it.
Okay, so that definitely makes more sense. Sorry, Sarah. I get it now.
Surprisingly, Sarah, I was following you.
I still don't get it. So if we're gonna vote, I don't think I can because I don't get it. So.
Well, I think my one concern here too, because then we're basically putting those numbers, the 20,000 and 30,000, into our budget for this year, right? Because we'll prepay, and then we'll use, these will come out of our budget. That's what we talked about, right, Michelle?
Yeah, I will tell you, the concern I have looking forward to kind of playing beyond FY21 is that these capital expenditures are one-time expenses. And for surpluses, I think that's how surpluses should be used. You pay one-time expenses, not recurring. And so in being able to accomplish some of these items, we understand what the public bidding threshold is, and there is not enough time to advertise in the Central Register, give vendors enough time to respond, and then have bids open prior to June 30th. It just is.
Right.
However, so what my suggestion would be if we go down this road is we know of 2 items that are currently in our FY21 budget that are one-time expenses. And that's the Go Math, online resource. Because we assume there will be a new program in place for FY21, and that'll be a different funding source. And then the FOSS science kits. So if I just don't have that in front of me now, but I believe that's approximately $65,000, and Michelle might be able to look that up. So $65,000 to me right there is the budget is protected from what you talked about earlier, having the base and rolling it forward. Because theoretically, those expenditures won't be in the FY22 budget because they're one-time expenses. So if we can, going through, come up with another 40,000 or so, and we have to go through the line, but there are things like, we have to, so that would be my concern. Right now, I think there's exposure of about $40,000.
Well, we can reduce that exposure by 20,000 because the front entry doors at Coffin don't need to go out to bid. They're under
right.
the threshold.
Yep, absolutely. That's exactly correct. Good point. So the exposure is about $20,000. Yeah, which that's much more acceptable than 115. So that's my only concern.
But I think that sounds like a really good solution to that concern.
Do you think, Michelle, because we did get an estimate already on the capital needs assessment, and so do we already have the paperwork written out for that to go out to bid? And do you think it's possible we could get that out to bid and maybe get some answers back? I mean, it's tight time-wise, but it's a possibility. We definitely could not on the high school because we don't have a scope ready.
Yeah, I don't think we could because of the bidding timelines. I would have to have it posted to the Central Register by tomorrow, but we'd also have to put it in a newspaper, and usually you have to do that a week in advance. So it would not show up in a newspaper until next week, and then you have to have 2 weeks from the date it shows up in the newspaper to open them, and then award the contract before June 30th.
Didn't we talk a little while ago about using these in the FY21 budget if we use that equal amount of dollars to prepay out of district tuition?
So that's,
Yeah.
I think,
What I asked.
yeah, so that's what Bill is talking about, correct? So that instead of prepaying tuition, we would buy supplies and then earmark so that there would actually be an earmark so that we're not lowering our threshold. Is that, am I understanding that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Does that make sense, Jen?
I'm sorry, I just don't. I'm.
Yeah.
You lost me a while ago.
I agree with Jen. There seems to be lots of options, and I'm gonna go back to the item that's still on the screen. Coffin School entry doors, high school entry doors, and capital needs assessment.
So I think we're in agreement on
If the committee differs, and the school bus, those are the 3 priority items.
4.
And I think, or 4, those are the 4 priority items. So at a minimum, we're going through a lot of conjecture and speculation about the mechanisms of funding. And I'd like to leave that to Michelle and town finance. If we gave her a vote or a directive that the priority of the committee is to fund the Coffin School, the high school doors, the needs assessment, and the school buses. And what is the best way to do that with the capital equipment articles, the facilities article, and also based on using the surplus, to Jen's point, what's the best way we can pay that forward and go from there? I think
Yes.
our objective should be to identify what the priorities are, because I don't think we're going to come up with the answers tonight about the best way to fund them. But if we can at least, as Bill, when he presented this a couple months ago, we prioritize these things. So tonight we can prioritize those as the 4 items, and within the mechanisms of funding and budgets, what's the best way we can bring that forward to the town to fund them.
Keep in mind that these priorities,
What?
keep in mind that this capital outlay request there was a much longer list from the facility subcommittee. And
Oh,
we're prioritized. So then we're prioritizing
Jen,
that. So
yeah,
I mean,
I don't disagree with, I'm in full agreement. And that was pre-March 13th, pre-COVID, when
right. So now we have an opportunity.
when all of this hits the town. I don't disagree with you at all.
And
It's a different landscape.
Here's
It's
the
a different
problem.
landscape now with COVID-19, and I think it's irresponsible to suggest that we should just press on. This is the budget we were given, and we should spend every last dollar of it and figure out how to do it, and not be cooperative in the same challenges. I have no idea what the challenges of the town are, because I haven't sat in, and there hasn't been anything written about the challenges that police, fire, public works, park and rec, every other department is going through. I'm only hearing what Sarah and Megan have participated in, and what the ask has been for the school committee for us to be a team player here. And I don't disagree with you, Jen. It was voted at town meeting, and we should be able to spend every last dollar of that money. All I'm saying is, let's be a team player here, identify what our priorities are, and have this meeting on Friday and see what's available to us. And if we can spend some of that surplus, let's spend it. I agree. But I want to be a team player. I want to work together with the town. We're in dire straits here. It's not a normal year where we just have $200,000 left and we're trying to figure out how to spend it. It's, there's so many challenges that and so many unknowns that we don't even know about.
Well, and that also goes to that, we will have unknowns as well, which.
Right. Yep. And we talked about those the other night at our budget hearing where we're funding $235,000 and we have $1.8 million in the CARES Act, and we have $100,000 that's coming directly to the schools. So yeah, I agree. But I think the objective tonight, and I'll stop, should be, what are the priorities? I've said it. It's the doors, it's the needs assessment, and it's the bus. And now let's go back and let them figure out how to make that happen as a priority. That's my recommendation.
Has did the finance committee or Jason talk about? Now, I don't think they did any specifics of what they're looking where they're seeing, if any, deficits in next year's budget for them.
Yeah, $1.6 million.
Well, that's townwide, but and we took off ours. I mean, I'm just saying, I guess you did. I mean, you didn't. They don't talk about the town side because they're not probably there yet. But understand.
I did get the sense that they were hoping, and that we were hoping from, the agenda and the reason why we're meeting tonight is that we would have a consensus from our committee of how we're funding these things.
Well, I guess
that was just my takeaway, that we were supposed to have a consensus of how we wanted to do it. Was it through the surplus? Was it through, Michelle and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding, was they wanted us to at least have a consensus and a suggestion from the school committee of how we wanted to fund this, and then they'll weigh in.
Right, but I think that's, unless I'm totally misunderstanding this conversation, I think that's then what we've done, right, with those four
Correct.
priorities, and that
Yes.
we're funding them through the surplus. Now the question is, what's the logistics around that?
I
And
haven't agreed.
I think we need to
those
have
four
with the town.
priorities, but for whatever it's worth,
Sorry, Jen.
I haven't agreed that those are the four. I haven't agreed that those are the four priorities.
Okay, so those are the ones that we've talked about. That was the recommendation on the table anyway.
Correct.
But paying for them through the surplus, but the logistics of that, whether we need to sort out with Michelle, Bill, and the
And
on the
it's,
town.
to me,
I don't know the answer to that.
to me, to add to that, so talking about these four things, and then to pay for them through the surplus, but knowing that that's going to be impossible to go out to bid for these, if it means that Bill and Michelle need to look to find one-time expenses for FY21 that we can flip-flop so that we're not decreasing the threshold of where we stand right now with that 40.5 or so.
Right. But I don't know that that's necessarily something that we as a committee need to figure out. Like, that's stuff that I think, Bill and Michelle and the
Yes.
town figure out. Like I said, those logistics.
But
And we can
that,
talk about it further.
the directive that instead of us lowering our threshold, lowering our ask in order to prepay on things, that we're going to try to flip flop some expenses so that it's covered, and so that we're still turning the town money, but also covering our own expenses correctly.
Yeah.
So,
I think so.
so there
Karen?
is one more one-time expense I wanted to suggest that we could use this money for, additionally use this money for, and it came up a lot at the budget hearing, the idea of a platform like Google Blackboard that will allow during distance learning or a week on, week off type of format for there to be much more engagement between the distance learning students, their current sitting classmates, and the teacher. I've had the opportunity to watch a few informational videos on how Google Blackboard works, and it seems to be a really great platform. Our educators would definitely want to look at it first and vet that out. But if we were to choose to do that, and we were to look into the price of a one-year subscription, if we bought it before June 28th out of this surplus, we would actually be covered through the full calendar school year next year still, and that would take some pressure off some of the items we were talking about at the hearing the other night that are possibilities that we might have to find in our budget. And it would I think give our educators and our students a tool to be much more successful in their outcomes with distance learning and integrating that to half the class being in at one time or another.
So, Bill, do you want to weigh in on that? Because I think you were mentioning that earlier today when we were chatting. And is that something, sort of the idea of that and where that would fall in FY21, and then is that something like with the FOSS and the math curriculum that could fall underneath that one-time expense piece when you guys are looking at this tomorrow?
Yep. So I have two thoughts, and they're both separate. So to Sarah's thought about the platform. So right now there's no line, there's no money specifically identified to do that. And so what I would suggest is, by the way, I think that's a good idea, but we need to get some input from staff. Desi is doing a survey of these different platforms, and the staff, would want the opportunity to take a look at them. That's going to take some time, but that definitely could be something that is done as part of the reopening plan. And I've heard some estimates that these platforms might cost on average $10 to $12 to $14,000 for the year. So on Monday night, I talked about the fact that in the FY21 budget, there is currently $162,000 budgeted for technology devices. And there are some, some of that money's been identified in terms of how many of this, that, and the other thing. I think given the circumstances, if the district is going to purchase, that either it comes from that pot of money or it comes from, the unanticipated expenses line, or, it comes from perhaps, we still have to hire new staff. We have retirements, we have resignations, we have to fill positions. There very well could easily be $10, $12, $14,000 in salary savings from those hires. So I think there's a way in the FY21 budget to pay for that. So in terms of the capital though, so I'm not sure that helps the situation. However, what I'm hearing, a quick summary of the capital piece, there are 4 items totaling $115,000 that has been discussed. Now, all of you may not agree that those are the priorities. That's something that the committee will have to hopefully either come to consensus or take a vote on that. I think I think that's not an unreasonable plan to bring forward and discuss with the liaisons Friday. That in the end leaves this range of $60,000 to $110,000 that reverts back to the town when FY20 books are closed. I don't think that's unreasonable at all. As a matter of fact, I think that that's very reasonable. And, as we've gone through this process, there's been reasonable agreement that has been made through this. Last Friday, there was an agreement to use the original $200,000 surplus, that was confirmed, to prepay expenses. That helped the town side. It helped us because we don't have to take that $200,000 from somewhere already identified in the FY21 budget. And then, I think this capital piece, that was a very positive conversation we had. By bringing forth a plan like this, it does allow Jason and his staff to reallocate for FY21 that $81,000, which I think is going to be very helpful to the town side. So I see a lot of benefit to this plan. And I personally don't think it's unreasonable. And, it's kind of a win-win. And I do agree that, the town budget is a collaborative process. The school committee absolutely has the authority to spend every last nickel. I think given the times we're in and the way this process has developed, my own personal opinion and my recommendation would be that a plan such as this that allows some money to revert back to the town side is a good plan, and I have a sense it'll be met positively. So that's my 2 cents on those 2 items.
So Megan and Sarah, obviously I think, Jen is not completely on board with some of the things that we're talking about. It seems as though possibly we need to take a vote on this. Jen, I don't know if maybe you want to say something.
No, I just want to make sure I understand, because I also got lost in the numbers. So that's all. If I could, I guess, you know what, I just wanted to, if we are going to take a vote, maybe we need to clarify.
Yeah, so okay, so
clarify with the numbers,
right. So right now, what we are asking Megan and Sarah to bring to their meeting on Friday is that we would like to find a way to pay for the Coffin School entry doors, the high school entry doors, the capital needs assessment, and the school bus. And that we can take those 4 as the priorities to find out how to take them out of the surplus, or flip-flop things around, flip-flop one-time expenses around to cover those out of our budget so that it frees up that money for the town.
okay.
Right, and then any remaining surplus, which would be anywhere between 60 and 100,000, would go back to the town.
Correct.
Okay, all right, and that also means, going back to Michelle, that if, I don't know how this works logistically, but Michelle, you had talked about, and so would you, Bill, that concerns if we do have some unforeseen bills that come in or costs that come in that you wanted to have, is that all done sort of
Yes.
after July 1st? Okay, so that.
So
if
that's that range, that $60,000 to $110,000. If we are budgeting $50,000 for those unanticipated expenses. So if all 50 of that is taken in the unanticipated expenses, then that leaves us turning over 60,000 to the town. But if none of it, then we turn over $110,000 to the town at the end of the fiscal year, or anywhere in between.
Okay,
Sarah, could we ask Michelle if she agrees with what I said
Absolutely.
in terms of that
Michelle.
50,000, that range?
Yeah, absolutely. I would feel comfortable. I mean, obviously, in the next couple of weeks, as we get closer to the end of June, you know, the confidence will go up as I'm monitoring all the statements that are coming in and whatnot. So yeah, I think 50,000 is a very good, comfortable number.
Thanks, Michelle. So
oh, sorry.
go ahead, Jen.
Well, I'm just trying, so the idea would be, we would go ahead, we would figure it out, this would go into our budget, and then I imagine that at some point there's a reconciliation of the numbers, I would think, at some point.
Yep. So Jen, that's a good question. What we have planned for the next school committee meeting is, and we'll get it out, we're hoping to get it out at the beginning of next week. We'll do a revised line item budget that reflects all of the changes that we've made through our budget adjustment tracking sheet, so that all the line items will now line up to that bottom line of $40,521,000. Does that help what you were asking?
Yeah, Sarah.
I can't tell if I'm talking, I can't tell.
You are. You're good, Jen. We can hear you.
All right, it's weird, because I don't get my little green highlight, and anyway.
Go ahead, Sarah.
So my one other thing, and I don't know if we wanted to formally take a vote on prioritizing these few items before we move on to further discussion about the budget, or just keep going. What do you prefer?
No, let's wrap this up.
Yeah, I think it sounds, I don't know that we need a vote. It sounds to me like we're in consensus with these 4 items moving forward to Friday.
Okay.
Then are you okay with it now that we've gone through the numbers again?
Yeah, Jen, you're muted.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, if we all have consensus, then I think
I'm trying to give hand signals, yes.
So Sarah, I feel comfortable that we've got the information we need to go ahead with Friday if you do.
Okay.
Fox.
I do. I think the only variable may be, I think Jason was going to look into what the rules on the lease was.
Yes.
And whether or not that might need to, but again, it's just moving money from pots. I think we've outlined what we want to fund, and they'll figure out what pots everything needs to come from. So speaking of the budget, as a follow-up to the hearing, one thing that I just want to make sure is, I think Bill was going to reach out to Michelle and ask her to kind of estimate if she could. And again, it's, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what impacts may be, if we're to be conservative, on the K and pre-K tuition. My only concerns with the numbers we're playing with is, given what's going on with COVID and that homeowners or that families are in the same financial crisis that the towns and the state and the federal government are, is that we very likely will see a reduction in their spending for that. And then that we potentially could see a reduction in circuit breaker. When we started, I think they were saying that they were going to give us 75%, which was more than we've seen ever. And you and Bill had decided to be conservative and use the number of 70. And now my sense is my question is 70 conservative enough? I just want to make sure that if we're making adjustments to other line items to balance things out, that we're talking about that as a group now.
So in terms of the K revenue, Michelle and I have had a conversation today. We're looking at some numbers. We really don't have anything concrete to share tonight, but we're crunching some numbers, and we'll have much more to report, next Thursday night. In terms of circuit breaker, I'm hearing different things. I think at this point now, we can adjust it, but it has to come from some other line item. I'm not sure where that is. There may be some possibilities that we're looking at. We just, one of the things that I just heard right near, I forget, it was Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday last week, possibly Thursday. We have a late retirement. So we have a K teacher who's retiring. So a recommendation I have for tonight is to, let me see, here we go. So if you can see this, so that K retirement will save us $30,000 in salary for the replacement. So I didn't put this on the adjustment sheet, but what I'm looking at, what this looks to me now is we take that savings and we reallocate that salary savings to the unanticipated budget line. So that line is now up to 165,699. And when we combine that with, based on the whole kind of plethora of unknowns that were talked about Monday night, from equipment to special education, lack of revenue, to possibly some cleaning issues or disinfecting issues. So we now have, what this means is that there's 165,000 in this line. There's approximately $100,000. We should have more information on what that number is going to be, our CARES money. So that's $265,000. Eric has been developing his IDA grant. We know the grant money, the federal grant monies, we don't anticipate any changes there. So he is budgeting using some of the grant money to budget for, compensatory services that may be required to the tune of $20,000 to $25,000. So, there's $290,000. And then we also, remember, have the $250,000 in the special ed reserve that can be used for unknown special education costs. So, we have that more closely aligns to the circuit breaker issue, Sarah. But, overall, that puts us, somewhere in the vicinity of $500,000 of different resources that we can use. And, we have, again, I can't stress this enough, the technology piece, it may be that for FY21, priorities get changed to meet our immediate needs. So we have that money available too, based on that. So, if there's a way to, by next week, getting to, if something comes up where we can increase the COVID line even more, I feel pretty comfortable with that as kind of a catch-all. But we are looking at the K because we just want to, we're just doing some more accounting of, where we started the year and where we're going to end up this year. Then whether we anticipate there being a balance, in that fund. There was a pretty strong balance in that fund to start the year, about $90,000. So we are talking about that, and if we can, we'll have some more on that next week.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to, just a kind of a point of order, we have kind of bridged, we closed our capital discussion, we're bridged into the FY21 budget discussion now, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
So I know, Bill, when we had chatted earlier, the kindergarten full day piece was something that you wanted to talk about. And then we also need to have the COLA conversation as well. So
Yes.
I think, Bill, you want to talk about that, or you want Sarah or Megan?
No. So in terms of the K tuition and the revenue piece that came up as a question, I just talked about it.
Yep, you're all set.
I want to add there. Yep, and then I did want to update the committee on the recent retirement.
Yep.
So I did those two. So that just leaves the COLA.
The COLA. Yep. So kind of if we want to move to that.
I think that really goes back to the committee for further discussion. It seemed to me that after last Thursday's school committee meeting, there were, members had different thoughts about that. And so that's why we're,
Yeah, so Megan or Sarah, do you guys, do either of you want to update from that meeting?
I can.
Okay.
And Sarah, feel free to add anything. I think, this did come up on Friday. I'm not going to speak for Jason, but what I took away from that was a very strong suggestion for us not to do this. If we look at what's happening on the, from the town side, there are no COLAs going out. Jason's taken a pay cut, as he told us on Friday. So I just, there was a strong suggestion to, at least reconsider or chat about it as a committee. Sarah, feel free to add anything.
So I think, so the town also clarified that they are not giving COLA increases to any non-union personnel. Their administrative assistants, their part-time employees, no one. We did decide as a school committee that there were some employees, whether they were union or non-union, that and I think we voted unanimously on this, that we were not willing to take away their COLAs. We had talked about this last week. And so I guess we left at the 42.5 is clarification, is reflective of administration COLA increases, not all non-union.
Correct. So basically what you're looking for from the full committee, Megan and Sarah, is the consensus to move forward, that is one of the ways, sort of the final way in which we will get to the 40.5.
Yeah. And I mean, personally, it's not something, that we want to do at all.
Right.
It's heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking for everyone across the town too. So, it's not something that we've come to lightly in any way.
I think it's again, it's like you said, Megan, it's unfortunate. I think it's a reality of where we're at, as as where funding sources are at. And I think from what I'm understanding, those administrators, particularly the principals, were concerned about their other non-union staff, and that, that they themselves were willing to take that for the team, but that if we could spare the lower wage employees, that was really important. And I think that's what we've done. And I think hopefully, yeah.
I just want to make a clarification. Oh, okay, never mind. Bill had texted me a clarification, but he took it back. I think we lost him. I'm not sure.
Okay. Hopefully he'll re-enter if he needs to.
Okay, sorry, but he took it back, so I'm good.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. And Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like I'm speaking for you a little bit on this, as far as what the principals, your conversations with the principals, and that they were most concerned about the lower paid staff and non-union than they were sort of with their own situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember this being part of the regular meeting conversation last week.
Sorry.
I may have been, but I'm not sure. But I think where we are, what was recommended was that that our administrators, will not be, that $43,000 is geared to our administrative team. Right.
Jen or David, any other thoughts?
Well, it's very hard for me to support this. Really.
I think it's hard for all of us to support it.
Very hard for me to support this. I don't know that I can, but that I'm one person. I guess I just try to understand. We just voted. We didn't vote. We decided, 15 minutes ago that we have a surplus that we're going to provide anywhere from $50,000 to $110,000 back to the town. So, I think we're doing that, out of a spirit of, trying to work together as a team, and as well as advocating for the area of this town that we're supposed to be advocating for, which is the school department, our admin, and our staff. And, it's been a long year, 14, 15, 16 months. And, our administrators have worked, and our teachers certainly, and our staff, but our administrators have worked above and beyond over the last 15 months for this school district. And global pandemic notwithstanding, I understand that. It's just very difficult for me to support this portion. I'm trying to weigh everything, and to say that we're going to, give a surplus fund back to the town that was appropriated to us in town meeting. And we have not made any cuts. We've been able to, through Bill and Michelle, we've been able to procure significant savings through attrition and how we've managed and cleaning up our salary lines. No one's lost their job. We've had a couple of positions that we are going to be able to not fill the vacancies. But this for me is very difficult and I'm not comfortable.
I'll have to say that I'm not comfortable as well. And nobody knew that this was coming. And from everything we've heard, everybody's worked very hard to deliver the best education possible. We heard Bill talk about the budget development for next year being a team effort. And we all know that it was a team effort to get through this year, whether it was the graduation of the high school students or kids moving on from vets up to the high school, everything that was done. It's a tough decision to support. And if we were in any other situation, I wouldn't support it, but it seems like having been on the FinCom, there is the town side that has decided there are administrators that are not going to get their raises, and I can't see how we can go forward and not do that. If there's an opportunity to make up for it at some point, I don't, post 2009, however it happens, but yeah, it's a difficult decision. I agree. But it's part of the reality of what we're in right now.
Yeah, I feel very similarly.
Bill, do you have a recommendation one way or another, or any insight to offer us?
So it really is a complicated issue. There are a number of considerations. It's easy for me to say this. It's easy for me to take a position, one would argue, but when all is said and done, and given the process that we've gone through, and again, it's been a collaborative effort both on the school side and on the town side. I just think that unfortunately, no one ever wants to have to recommend this. No one ever wants to have to vote it. And I can attest to how hard and how dedicated, our administrators are. And I think people see that. But just trying to be as objective as I possibly can, you would hear this same conversation on the town side as well. And so, I just think that's an important consideration also. And I guess I'm recommending it. I put it on the sheet, so I'll take that. I'll take that stand reluctantly.
And I think I, reluctantly agree.
And I would say that if things change and we're in April and things don't play out as negatively as we thought, it's always the prerogative of the committee to make those exempt employees whole. But it's hard to commit to that at this point, given the unknowns. And I agree. I think we need to move forward with this. It's a tough decision, but forward as a town is the best way to do this. The town has it's always been the way we've done a lot of things, and I don't think there's ever been a year when somebody's gotten a raise on the town side and not on the schools, or vice versa. So
You know, we hear a lot in this town about this is how we always do it. This is how it's always been done. This is a unique year, obviously, for in a lot of ways. I think that we are doing our fair share in what we're going forward with in terms of our capital ask and our surplus, and I cannot support this vote. I will be voting no.
that's fair.
Our biggest and most important asset is our staff and our administrators.
On the school side, I agree, Jen.
That's all I'm speaking for on the school
On the
side.
town, fire, police, municipal.
I'm speaking about.
Marblehead is the town that it is, and I'll disagree with you. Marblehead is the town that it is because we work collaboratively, and
And we have, David.
we were in a $700,000 hole last year, Jen, and the town met us halfway to fund $350,000 of the $700,000.
David, I don't want to rehash history.
I did it for 11 years in the finance committee.
Students
We
and
did an
their
override.
responsibility.
Jen, we can disagree. Now you're just talking about, just because we've always done it this way. Well, it served the town well. In 2005, the last time we had the override, we sat down as a school committee with Larry D.G. Marino, Rob Dana, Amy Drinker, everybody at the table, and we figured out what the ask was going to be for the override, and the override is coming. We know it. And we're going to do the same thing, and we will work collaboratively, and we're not going to do it on our own. So that's the challenge for me is I think Marblehead has worked well together, and it's unfortunate that we're at this crossroads where we're making decisions about people's pay and salary, and it's a difficult decision, but I will have to support the $42,000, and I'd be the first one to say if there's an opportunity in 2021 where things go to the positive, that we can fund those if the money's there. But if it's not, then we can't, and we'll have to figure it out with the FY22 budget process.
Now, let me ask this. Bill, has there been a discussion? I think I heard the number that the town is realizing an $82 or $80-something thousand savings from foregoing their COLA increases for their non-union. Has there been a discussion about, since we do have this extra money that they weren't anticipating, of somehow figuring out a mechanism in which we can help the town make their non-union people somewhat whole, if not all whole, and maybe their union and our administrators don't get 2.5, but maybe they get 1, and we can help them make their people more whole, and we can do the same for ours. Is that even a possibility or a talking point?
I don't know, Sarah. There's a lot of moving parts to that. You have to get a lot of different groups to agree. I haven't had that specific discussion with anyone.
Well, it wouldn't be up, it would be up to them to decide, if we give back.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
That's
Yeah.
their decision on how they're gonna spend.
Well,
it.
no, I just meant
They
that if
can't-
we're doing it because the town has to, if we're able to facilitate the town not having to, could we work together and try to make all of our employees whole? And the answer may be that no, it's not possible, but I just thought that if there's a way, if we're looking at this as one town, that everybody becomes whole. And the answer may be that there's not.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, I think, any way that we can work together, I agree with that. I think and I'm not saying yes or no in either way. I just purely from a budgeting perspective, I think you typically wouldn't want, and we're not in a typical situation, so I understand that, but typically you wouldn't want to fund an ongoing expense with a one-time surplus, right? Because a cost of living adjustment carries over every year and then, impacts that salary. Now, that's just
Actually,
point
it
of
doesn't.
clarification.
It doesn't, because they don't have contractual ones, so it's voted every year at town meeting for the non-union.
Right, but when you increase their salary, when you increase it again the next year, it's based on that new base salary.
Yes, that is true. Yep, you're right. But yeah.
My point was we're not talking, millions of dollars here. We're actually talking a very, in the scheme of things, drop in the bucket. But I do understand the point of where the reasoning came from for all of this. But we're not talking, I just want to be clear that on neither side are we talking millions of dollars of recoup savings.
So Bill, in your opinion, do we need to take a vote on this? Would that be beneficial?
I think it would be beneficial only because there were questions about this particular line, much more than others.
Mhm.
And given that the school committee, determines salary and benefits,
Mhm.
or for certainly administrators who are on individual employment contracts, and then through the budget process, you determine that for others. Yeah, I think a vote. I think it's pretty clear where we're going, but
I mean, why do we need to take a vote?
I don't think there's a formal. I'm sorry, Jim.
I'm curious why we need a formal vote. I guess
I don't think we do, because you will vote a budget number,
Yeah, that's what I
which
meant.
includes this. So I
Okay.
don't believe you need a formal vote. I think
And we just kind of know that we're not all exactly in consensus. And I think, Sarah's point is hopefully heard and.
I mean, I'm prepared to make a vote.
What?
I'm prepared to vote. I have no problem.
I understand. I think we all are. I think.
Why?
right.
The logistics of this, like why?
Logistically, you do not need to vote. Everybody, this has been discussed thoroughly. Every member has provided their input and
I agree.
their case.
I agree.
That's part of the minutes, and then ultimately you will vote you will vote the budget next week. So in voting,
And the budget that we vote next week includes this
correct.
$40,000.
That's correct. Exactly.
Just to Megan's point, when she was talking about how this builds a base, we do have to acknowledge and appreciate that by doing this, we are affecting the long-term base of our administrators. And as we negotiate to renew their contracts in the future, that we should bring into effect that we put a one-year freeze on this and therefore affected their long-term base. That's all I'd ask, is that we keep that in mind.
Yeah, I agree, Sarah. We can't lose sight of that for sure.
Yeah. And I think it makes it so that we are hopeful that in the future, even if it isn't, this year or next year, that at some point we can make each one of them whole for this.
Well, I don't think we should be talking about FY22 at this point. I think we should only be talking about FY21.
All right. So I think that's what you, Sarah and Megan, I think that's what you guys need for your meeting on Friday, correct?
Yes.
I believe so.
Do we still have a need for executive session?
That I don't believe we do, Bill? No?
No, we do not.
All right.
Supposed to have been an executive session?
Say
No,
that again. Jen, it was put on the agenda as a placeholder.
So this wasn't the subject of executive session. All right.
No, not this particular, no,
I didn't think so.
this was not.
I would like to make a motion just because 41 people have sat through this, and we had, I think, noted on Monday that there would be an option for public comment at tonight's meeting. I'd like to make a motion to open it up to public comment if anybody has one to make.
Okay, so there's a motion.
Second,
All right. Okay, I'll take a roll call. David Harris.
before you, wait, Sarah,
yeah.
before you do that, can I just make a comment before we?
Sure.
I want to make a comment really to Bill and to the rest of the committee before we vote this. We did have the long budget hearing the other night, and a lot of folks stuck there through the end. I've had a number of conversations since then. I've heard from a number of parents, and I just think what I'm hearing, I don't know about other school committee members, that parents are looking for us to, or the school district, not the committee, the school administration, to be really starting, now, basically trying to put together, at the very least, a task force or a group of folks to really start to formulate the reentry plan and how we're going to reopen the schools, knowing that we are still waiting for DESE. But I'm just throwing that out to you, Bill, because I know, we're in the midst of a transition now, but I'm strongly, I guess, asking you and your team to consider doing that sooner rather than later. That's all. I wanted to say that before we open.
Bill, you're muted.
Oh, I am?
No, Bill is.
Bill's muted.
Yes, so I intend to present next Thursday night a plan that will provide an organizational structure to start moving forward. And part of that plan will be to reach out to the community for some participation on the various subgroups by that we're finalizing, identifying that would make up different components and key pieces that will be part of the reopening plan. So I think that's something that that is something we hope to accomplish and have in place. Starting that process by the end of next week.
That's great. I really appreciate that. And can I go a step further and request that when we start reaching out to folks beyond the administration, that we really are looking for.
Is the motion, excuse me, the motion is for public comment.
It is, David, and I want to make some
The
comments.
motion is for public comment. No, point of order, I'm sorry. The motion is for public comment, Jen. I don't disagree with everything that you're saying, but we have a motion on the floor for public comment.
Jen, I think maybe you can move this offline with Bill. I know Megan and I were talking to him about it earlier today. So
we have a full agenda that we can take up at the meeting next week, and we can have it on the agenda for discussion. But the motion is for public comment.
And I was just trying to make
not for reentry plan discussions and conjecture and speculation about things that Bill hasn't even had an opportunity to share with us, other than emails that have come from DESE since Friday night at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I'll move for a vote. David Harris.
Yes, public comment.
Sarah Gold, yes. Megan Taylor.
Yes.
Jen Schaffner.
Yeah. Yes.
Sarah Fox.
Yes, but just for clarification, I meant public comment at some point. I didn't mean to shut the meeting down.
Well, we had a motion on the table, so we sort of needed to follow through on that. And if discussion,
I wasn't trying to shut the meeting down, Sarah. The comment on to other
Point
agenda.
of order, David, we've moved on.
It's okay. So if anybody would like to make public comment, can you please put your name and address in the chat right now? Meredith Tedford.
Hi all, can you hear me?
Yep.
You're probably getting sick of hearing from me by now, but I really appreciate the difficult spot that all of you are in. And having been in the same spot in many years past, and for many years, I know how challenging it is to make these tough decisions. I guess all of these tough decisions in my mind continue to be downstream solutions to a problem. And I and many others are still waiting for upstream solutions to these problems that revolve around big picture thinking and planning and considerations, so that every single year you don't all have to repeat next year, down the road, in the future, maybe later. I think people are tired of hearing that. And there's no question that this year is an extraordinary, exceptional year. But if we had been doing the work, I don't think we'd once again be in this tight a bind as we're in. So, I am once again going to be a broken record and continue to please think upstream solution and bigger picture, so we are not death by 1,000 cuts to a budget every single year. Thanks.
Erin Noonan.
Hi. Yeah, no, I mean, I just was taking in what Meredith was saying, and I do have to say, I mean, this has been a really difficult year, for many people. It's not a lot. I mean, personally, I know people in this town are losing jobs and taking pay cuts left and right. But I do know that there's a lot of strength in our community, and I was really happy to hear, Bill, that you were working on something for the technology piece. And I do really believe that there's a lot of goodwill in our town. And I know we live in a town that we have access and resources that would be free to us, that are people who could step up, who have expertise in software and technology, and other areas, like Jeff the other night. And I think putting out a call and you guys deciding and vetting the right people to, who could, and I'm not saying it even has to be a long-term operation, but who would be willing to volunteer their time in an advisory capacity for our public schools in town. I think, why would we, that's a great resource that we should really tap into. And I know I've said that to you all before, and I appreciate, Bill, that you've got something going on with that.
Thanks, Erin. All right, that is all that I have in public. Oh, well, I've got one more coming in at the last second. Jennifer Eaton.
Hi, sorry, I just had one really quick thing I wanted to mention. If you guys just haven't thought about it, I listened in the other night, and I saw with the new standards that came out, I know they're maybe just for summer, but I'm not sure if they carry into fall, with like the cleaning procedures. And I think Jeff sort of mentioned them with his comment the other night. But I'm just concerned because working for Partners Healthcare, we can't even source like wipes and masks and, those type of PPE, products easily, or I know that the cost and like the availability of them has been difficult, and that's for a multi-million-dollar healthcare company. So I didn't know how much thought or guidance there's been, if any, for the schools in terms of like availability, in terms of your budget, and how that's going to play into things for when the kids do go back to school, in terms of, like, I know it said they had to be disposable masks and cleaning solutions, because I know even for us, like the wipes, we used to have like the 2-minute wipes, and now we're down to the 5-minute wipes, and they're now in the hallway, not at every bedside. So just thinking of that and your buying power, and even getting the wipes. I know you can't even find them in the stores. So just the thought process behind sourcing those materials and the cost, how that fits into your budget. Just wanted to put that out there. So thanks.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
All right, that is everybody who has been in the chat for public comment. So I will adjourn us at 9:12 p.m. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.